Should the Kansas City Chiefs trade for a wide receiver? Now, the interesting thing about this question is that it was a question long before the actual injury to Rashee Rice, going all the way back to when Hollywood Brown went down in the preseason, the very first snap of the very first preseason game, and that moment was probably as close to a 2007 Chiefs fan that I had felt in a very long time. Since then, of course, Isaiah Pacheco has been injured. Since then, of course, Rashee Rice has been injured. All of these long-term injuries. Part of the irony to this, part of the devastating irony to this swing of events, I've been talking about injuries and depth on this channel for basically the entire time that it's been around. I think the second video I made was about roster rot. This idea that because you draft solo, because even back then, prior to 6 AFC championship games, the Chiefs had played in quite a bit of postseason football and had been drafting lower in the ranks for a while. Brett Veach has done a really good job of making as many picks count as humanly possible, but the idea has been there for quite some time that the Chiefs would be vulnerable to injury, not just because of depth, but vulnerable to injury because of the fact that they are getting so many games in addition to the actual 17 now game season. The irony on ironies here is that these injuries, these devastating injuries thus far, have come to Hollywood Brown, a guy that had not played for the Chiefs and had known very little postseason football. Isaiah Pacheco, the young fire starter running back, the spark plug running back, and Rashee Rice, a second-year wide receiver. Not the offensive lineman, not the defensive lineman. Right? So there is quite a bit to sort of revel in as we talk about whether or not the Kansas City Chiefs should trade for another wide receiver. There is an article from Arrowhead Pride by Ron Kopp titled 5 Wide Receivers Available Through Trade. And the options here are interesting, but let's get into that. Number 1, Amari Cooper, Cleveland Browns. Cooper has only the 2024 season left on his contract, in which he earns a base salary of $1.2 million. His cap would be no more than $933,000. That makes him a player Kansas City could afford. With Cleveland now 1-3, the Browns might be ready to make a deal. Last season, the Pro Bowl wide receiver racked up 1,250 yards and 5 scores through the air, the 7th 1,000-yard campaign of his career. Cooper turned 30 years old this summer, but continues to show the skills that make him a true number 1 target. Now, this part about being 30, I'm not sure that really obviously it matters, and obviously it matters because of the precipitous sort of decline that can happen to players in that situation. I don't think it really matters for the Chiefs as far as continuity building, as far as what it means to be a Kansas City Chief for the long term, because this is going to be a 1-year rental, and I think the Chiefs are getting into this situation knowing that. I do think that the Kansas City Chiefs do prefer to have longer-term prospects for the team. Hollywood Brown signed that 1-year sort of mercenary contract, but I think that at every step of the way, there was sort of this wink and nudge that, hey, if things go well and we can find the way to have the money, we will sign you. I don't think it was ever really necessarily realistic, because had he been healthy, he would have been a dynamic receiver, would have gone probably over 1,000 yards, in my opinion, with Mahomes throwing him the ball, with the Andy Reid offense getting him down the field, etc. So I don't know that it was ever really necessarily realistic that he could have been a multi-year player for the Kansas City Chiefs, but I do think that it was sort of implied to be in the cards if everything went right. Amari Cooper here, I think, is probably the pinnacle of the situation that the Kansas City Chiefs could want because of the pay, because of the trade partners. He's in conference, not in division. The thing that's going to make this difficult for the Kansas City Chiefs is that everyone looking at this situation around the NFL trying to acquire wide receiver talent is going to be looking at the Amari Cooper situation. Davante Adams obviously provides a much bigger target, much less realistic for many teams. I don't think the Chiefs are going to mortgage their entire future in order to acquire a wide receiver right now, but I do think that they would be willing to give up what it would take to get a guy like Amari Cooper. A pure route runner who can align outside or in the slot, that is important to the Amari Cooper situation. Deontay Johnson. Johnson is also set to hit free agency in 2025, making him a one-year rental for a contender. He holds a base salary of $7 million this year. The Panthers are 1-3, and no matter how well quarterback Andy Dalton plays, their eyes are on the long term. Fortunately, Dalton gives the 28-year-old playmaker a chance to show the skills the Chiefs need. Between weeks 3 and 4, Johnson caught 15 passes for 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. Of course, this is an interesting situation. I didn't read the intro. I don't know if Ron Kopp has set these up in sort of descending order as far as number 1 being the best, number 2 being the second best. Kind of the article plays out that way. Deontay Johnson would be an interesting situation for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that he would provide, like Hollywood Brown, an interesting if this works out case scenario. The Chiefs, I think, would be willing to sign him to a long-term thing. Deontay Johnson is a guy, should he find himself a member of the Kansas City Chiefs, I think that Mahomes could take advantage of the things that he can do. He is elusive with the ball in his hands. That makes him a strong fit in Kansas City this season. That is part of what the Chiefs are going to be missing with Rashee Rice on the sideline. That elusiveness, that sort of maybe not tackle breaking ability, but tackle avoiding ability. This is a player that, should he find himself on the Kansas City Chiefs, is going to add to the ability for the Chiefs to take shots downfield. I think that speed is something that should be taken into consideration here. This offense was all preseason long built up on the idea that they would be a deep shot offense, and so that's what the playbook's going to look like. Without having to completely adjust the playbook, what are you doing bringing wide receivers in? Christian Kirk, number 3, is a guy that kind of plays that same role, in my opinion, maybe a little less elusive, but is going to probably garner targets further downfield. A trade for Kirk would mean the Chiefs are investing in the Jaguar slot receiver through 2025, but that may be intriguing to Kansas City. The severity of Rice's injury and the potential suspension could have the front office looking for players with more than 1 year remaining on their contracts. Kirk has a base salary of $14.5 million this year and a cap hit around $16.5 million in 2025. That may be too rich for the Chiefs, but he would fit the offense. He is 2 years removed from producing 84 receptions, 1,108 yards, and 8 touchdowns in former Kansas City Chiefs assistant coach Doug Peterson's scheme. He has the skills to make plays after the catch, but also fits into Jacksonville's vertical passing game. Kirk's average depth of target this season is 13.2 yards. That is something that you like to see as a Chiefs fan. That is something that would be helpful in keeping things open for the offense. Sort of the dastardly situation scenario here in Kansas City is the fact that it's been 2 wide receivers and a running back that have gone down. So you are shorthanded in both the receiving game as well as the running game. So basically only power backs left on the roster mean that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be lacking some explosion from that standpoint in the first place. So the ability to add a guy who is garnering downfield targets, not just stretch plays, not just a guy who's taking the ball at the line of scrimmage and able to get 9 yards out of it and therefore has a 9-yard average, sort of the Juju Smith-Schuster 2022 game plan where you throw the ball 8 yards downfield. If the catch is made, it's an 8-yard gain. This idea of having a wide receiver that is getting targets nearly 15 yards downfield would prove fruitful for this offense. That is what you are. That would be an interesting dynamic with Xavier Worthy on the other side. But again, you've got two smaller targets. Like, there's a lot of weird factors at play for Kansas City this year, that being one of them. The fact that Mahomes has not been particularly on target this year, not been particularly sharp this year. Looking into that, would you rather have a bigger target at wide receiver? I don't know, especially when of the 4 picks that Mahomes has thrown, it seems that 3 of them have been towards Travis Kelce, who is the big target in this offense. It's just a weird year so far. The article moves on to DeAndre Hopkins. The 5-time Pro Bowl receiver has only this season left in his contract with the Titans, who are 1-3 after their Monday Night Football victory. While Hopkins would have a 2024 cap hit over $9 million in Kansas City, he is currently playing through a torn MCL from last summer that did not require surgery. He has yet to play over 50% of Tennessee's offensive snaps any game this season. In Week 3, he finally looked more like himself, accumulating 73 yards and a touchdown on 6 catches. In this Chiefs offense, he would be a possession receiver. So by what the Chiefs lost in Rashee Rice on this list, DeAndre Hopkins is probably the second closest thing to Amari Cooper. He's not going to offer you, I don't think, the run after the catch ability. He is going to give you a fairly big target who is able to actually snag the ball. He's going to give you a guy that is capable and sturdy at the NFL level. A lot of the problems that you're going to get with players that you can acquire 5 weeks into the season is that if they have any upside, it's because they have shown their downside. This is the conundrum with acquiring talent in season, is that if it's affordable, and it's affordable by acquirement, meaning the Chiefs don't have to give up a lot, and it's affordable by the salary cap, which the Chiefs don't have a whole lot, then it is normally a player that is not performing but may have upside, like Joker, right? A couple seasons ago, the Chiefs acquired a very talented wide receiver who had done nothing in the NFL. That was the asking price was something low enough. It was a 3rd and a 5th, I believe. So still, Kadarius Toney, you won the trade because you got a couple Super Bowls out of it. But that was the reason Kadarius Toney was available to be acquired was because he had shown promise in college and only disappointment in the NFL. He had 1 game against the Cowboys. The 5th option here, Demarcus Robinson. That's how quickly things fall off. This is not a mistake by Ron Kopp. This is not an appeal to nostalgia by Ron Kopp. That's how quickly things fall off here. Robinson is one trade option who has experience in Kansas City's system and with Patrick Mahomes. He will be a free agent in 2025, and this season carries a base salary of $2.5 million. The Rams now stand 1-3 with injuries at wide receiver, but Los Angeles has shown it can develop young pass-catching talent. The team's front office could see the value of compensation for a veteran player amid a lost season. This is an interesting bit of something to think about, I guess, from the article that is extracurricular perhaps to what it is that the article is about. The Rams find themselves 1-3. How often this season have we heard that the Kansas City Chiefs could very easily be 0-4? They could very easily be 1-3. They could very easily be 2-2. I think that is a fundamental misunderstanding of football on some level to say those things, but true enough. And the Chiefs have lost 2 wide receivers and a running back. I believe the Rams have just lost their big 2 pass catchers. It's possible they've lost more, and I'm just not abreast of that. But should the Chiefs have found themselves 1-3 and with injuries at wide receiver, running back, and defensive end from last season, right? Charles Omenihu still hasn't found his way to the field, not to mention Mike Dana missed a game. Would the Kansas City Chiefs themselves be in the position of sellers? Would the Kansas City Chiefs themselves be trying to run a fire sale on anything they had that was in anyone they had, who was in the last year of their contracts? These are interesting questions to ask, but do the Kansas City Chiefs want to go back on Demarcus Robinson? Well, the Chiefs have been bringing back absolutely everyone that has ever put on the red and gold. I would not be a fan of this move, depending on how cheap it was, right? If you were trading something that is a 7th-round pick in order to acquire Demarcus Robinson to maybe continue your Super Bowl run, that's worth it. Demarcus Robinson might still be running backwards. Who knows where Demarcus Robinson is, but I would not be particularly welcoming of this move. Anyway, that is all I wanted to get through with this article from Arrowhead Pride. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not designed, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about. So consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.